Hello, I'm Nicola Yuill from the Children and Technology Lab in Psychology at the University of Sussex in the UK. I'll be reporting on what we found from talking to parents about the common behaviours and experiences in managing with a child who has WSS. We're very grateful to the many people and organisations for helping us with this, but parents have been our main source of help and inspiration. One of the big difficulties parents mention is professionals' lack of knowledge about how to provide best support for children with WSS. So school staff, general practitioners, other health and social care workers, and the public in general, who often don't understand the common behaviour challenges and the facilities needed to help WSS children to thrive. There's very little research on this, as most work covers more medical and genetic aspects. So in the summer of 2019, Jess Marshall had funding from the University of Sussex for a summer project supervised by me, but the topic initially inspired from Camilla Elphick. With the help of WSS in the UK and US, Jess and our researcher Hannah did phone interviews of about an hour long each with 25 parents of WSS children, 24 mums and a dad. The children, 11 boys and 14 girls, were aged from 2 to 32 years at the time of interview. Only 4 of them had no siblings, and 8 children also had another reported diagnosis of autism or ADHD. We typed out all the interviews carefully, taking care that any identities stayed hidden, so that we could search systematically for common themes using a technique called thematic analysis. Different people in the research team looked at the data independently and came up with similar ideas. The patterns we found fall under 3 main headings: intense sociability, intense and exclusive relationships, and volatility. We also found some common patterns in children's thinking and sensory patterns, so academic strengths and weaknesses and memory. And finally, we asked what strategies parents had used in managing and support for their children. So I'll go through each of these themes in turn. So first, the big theme of intense sociability. This fell into 3 parts, and you'll see on each slide I've put some quotes from parents that give you a flavour of the sorts of things that they said. So the unbounded sociability of many WSS children, 3/4 of parents mentioned this, and it's often the first thing that they told us. I won't read all the quotes out, but you might recognise them in children you know. Then, the experience that WSS children's affection can be intense and often very physical. About half of parents mentioned this. Finally, in this theme, about 1/3 of parents also mentioned positivity or contentment in their children. We noticed that this was almost all with the younger children. All of these quotes were from children under 6, except for one 11-year-old. The second big theme was intense or exclusive relationships with different people, and again this fell into 3 parts. First, almost half of parents mentioned a strong preference for adults, some with a need for quite exclusive contact, often with the main caregiver, as one said, like Velcro. And for some children, this did relate to anxiety. Then, parents cited the younger play patterns that their children showed, which of course depend on the age and developmental stage of the child. So when children interacted with peers rather than adults, they might be playing alongside rather than with other children, and sometimes their peers have outgrown the child's interests, which can be more typical of younger children. Having said that, the WSS children who had siblings often had intense and exclusive relationships with them, sometimes with a sort of love-hate pattern, which of course can happen in any sibling relationship, but having a sibling with a learning disability does affect sibling relationships. It's worth mentioning too that at least 2 children with WSS were reported to have very close friendships with a peer, both in middle childhood and in young adulthood. The third big theme was to do with being volatile or changeable. Again, there's 3 subparts to this. So the first part of this involves difficulty with transitions. So 80% of parents mentioned a lack of flexibility or a need for routine, together with difficulty in diverting the child. There was a big overlap of this aspect with the next sub-theme of impulsiveness, with well over half of the parents mentioning this. Parents especially spoke of flipping from positive to negative in a very short time and often quite unpredictably. This leads to the third sub-theme here. As one parent put it, a massive issue with aggression. 72% of parents mentioned this all across the age range. Now, for 2 of the 25 children, this was exclusively self-harm, but for other children, it also included 2 other people. And we understand that this is a big issue for families. This is what families told us. So here are the 3 big themes, but we also had some comments that we hadn't particularly expected or asked about, and those were sensory and cognitive patterns. Over 60% of parents noted that their child had sensory sensitivities, so this might be a mix of sensory seeking and sensory overload, and it included sound, taste, smell, and touch. Children varied in their communication and learning levels, but for academic patterns, some parents cited their child's very good word reading or vocabulary, but a relative weakness in understanding what they had read. Also mentioned children's remarkable memories, such as remembering a small detail from long in the past. We made a quick listing of strategies that parents had reported using, and in this slide, we've linked it to some handbooks on the Helpful Cerebra website, so these will be available to you after the talk. And we finish with some of the very positive experiences parents told us about. So you can see on these quotes here that there were some things that parents really valued and found special in their children. So thank you very much for listening. Here's our contact details, and we'll be happy to take questions.